People always say family never turns on you. They are wrong because mine did, and it all started with a necklace I never touched, and a lie I never saw coming. One minute I was pouring orange juice at my sister's birthday brunch. The next she stood up in front of everyone, pointed at me, and said, "She stole my $9,000 necklace." Laughter stopped. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from, and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. The room did not just go silent, it died. The music was still playing softly, some jazz playlist Ashley had curated for her perfect Chicago graduation party, but nobody was listening. Every eye was on me. I was standing there holding a silver tray of champagne flutes I had just refilled, wearing a dress that cost less than the napkins, while Ashley stood on a chair in her shimmering gold gown, looking like a tragic queen. My mother, Jennifer, was the first to move. She did not ask if it was true. She did not look at me with concern. She looked at the guests. She looked at the wealthy friends she was trying to impress, the ones who probably owned the building we were renting. Then she marched over to me, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. "Get out!" she hissed. It was low, but in that silence, it sounded like a scream. "Mom, I didn't. Stop it. Just stop it." She cut me off. Her face contorted in a way that would have been ugly if she was not so perfectly made up. "You are ruining the vibe. You always do this. You just can't stand seeing your sister shine, can you? Just get out before you embarrass us any further." My father, Michael, was standing by the bar. He did not even look at me. He was too busy topping off the glass of a man who owned half the car dealerships in the state. He just gave a small, dismissive wave of his hand, like he was shooing away a fly. I set the tray down on a side table. My hands were not shaking. I expected them to be, but they were steady. I reached into my purse, pulled out a single key, and placed it next to the champagne. It was the key to their house. The house I did not live in, but paid for. "Okay," I said. My voice was quiet, calm. "I am going." I walked out. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked past the balloon arch that cost $800. I walked past the catering staff, who looked at me with pity. I walked out into the cool evening air, and got into my car. It was a 10-year-old sedan with a dent in the rear bumper, parked between a Range Rover and a Porsche. I sat there for a long time, just listening to the engine idle. The silence inside the car was heavy, suffocating, but it was also clarifying. For years, I had told myself I was helping. I was the good daughter, the responsible one. The one who made sure the mortgage was paid so my parents could pretend they were successful. The one who paid off Ashley's credit cards so she could maintain her image as an influencer. I thought I was keeping a roof over their heads. I thought I was protecting them. But sitting there in the dark, I realized something. I wasn't a protector. I was a battery. I was a resource they drained to keep their lights on. There is a trap we fall into when we are the responsible ones. We think our utility is our value. We think that if we make ourselves indispensable, we will eventually be loved. We confuse being used with being needed. And we tell ourselves that the burden we carry is proof of our strength, when really, it is just the weight of their entitlement. My mother had called me plain so many times I believed it. She told me I was lucky to be smart, because I would never get by on my looks like Ashley. She made me feel like I was glass, transparent, functional, easily looked through to see the beautiful things behind me. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 8:15. By now, the party was back in full swing. They were probably laughing about me. Ashley was probably telling a story about how she always knew I was jealous. They were drinking champagne I paid for, in a venue I paid for, celebrating a degree I paid for. I put the car in gear. I did not drive back to the suburbs. I drove toward the city, toward the skyline that glittered in the distance. I drove toward my apartment, the one in the high-rise with the doorman and the view of the lake, the one my family did not know existed because they never asked where I lived. I did not turn on the radio. I needed to think. I needed to calculate. Because the check for the venue was scheduled to clear tomorrow morning. The mortgage payment was set for the first of the month. The credit card auto-pay was triggered for next Tuesday. I was not crying. Tears are for people who have lost something. I had not lost anything. I had just been fired from a job I never should have taken. And now, I was going to process the severance package. I unlocked the door to my apartment on the 42nd floor. The air inside was cool, conditioned, and smelled of lemon zest and peace. My family did not know this place existed. They thought I lived in a studio in Wicker Park because that is what a struggling data analyst could afford. They did not know I was a senior lead for a fintech firm, managing portfolios worth millions. I sat at my glass desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, a stark white rectangle in the dim room. I did not feel sad. Sadness is a foggy emotion, inefficient. I felt precise. I felt like I was back at work, staring at a spreadsheet that did not balance. It was time for an audit. I opened a new document. I titled it Liabilities. Then, I started typing. First, the mortgage, $3,800 a month. My father, Michael, loved to talk about his house. He loved to stand on the porch and survey his domain, but he had not made a payment in 4 years. He was a failed real estate agent who hadn't closed a deal since 2019. I paid it. I paid it so he could keep his pride, and so my mother could keep her garden club status. Next, the credit cards. Ashley's influencer lifestyle. The trips to Tulum. The designer bags. The vintage diamond earrings she accused me of stealing. $15,000 in debt that I had quietly wiped clean last Christmas because Mom cried and said it would ruin Ashley's future. I paid it. I paid it because I was the safety net. Then, the utilities. The gas, the electric, the water, the high-speed internet they needed to stream their shows and upload their lies. The venue fee for tonight's party. The caterer. The open bar. I looked at the total. It was staggering. I had been pouring my life force into a black hole. For years, I listened to my father lecture me about money. He would sit at the head of the table, carving a roast I bought, and tell me I needed to be more ambitious. He would tell me to find a husband who could take care of me. It was a joke. A patriarchal fantasy funded by his daughter's paycheck. He played the king, but I was the treasury. He was loud, taking up all the air in the room with his ego, while I sat in silence, my success quiet but solvent. I logged into the bank portal. My fingers flew across the keys. It was not revenge. It was a correction, a market adjustment. I pulled up the recurring transfers. Mortgage, cancel. Confirm? Yes. Utilities. Remove payment method. Confirm? Yes. The credit card autopay. Disable. Confirm? Yes. Finally, I went to the venue contract. I had put the deposit on my personal Amex. The balance was due to autopay at midnight. I called the fraud department. I reported the card compromised. I blocked the transaction. It took 12 minutes. 12 minutes to dismantle a lifestyle they had spent a decade pretending they earned. I closed the laptop. The screen went dark. Outside my window, the city lights of Chicago burned bright, millions of little sparks in the darkness. Somewhere in the suburbs, the lights were still on at the mansion. The music was still playing. They were still drinking my champagne, but the meter had just run out. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. I was not a victim anymore. I was the CEO of my own life. And I had just liquidated a non-performing asset. The week that followed was a study in silence and noise. My apartment was silent. The world outside my windows was silent. But my phone was a grenade that kept detonating. Over and over again. I did not block them. That would have been inefficient. I needed data. I needed to know exactly how they would spin the narrative before the financial reality hit them. It was the slow burn phase of the audit, watching the subject incriminate themselves before presenting the findings. They had not noticed the money was gone yet. The mortgage grace period had not expired. The power company had not sent the disconnect notice. They were still living in the illusion of safety, which meant they had plenty of time to focus on destroying my reputation. On Tuesday, Ashley posted it. A storytime video. I watched it on my lunch break, sitting in my corner office with a salad I actually tasted for the first time in years. She was sitting on her bed, bathed in the glow of a ring light, wearing a sweatshirt that was carefully off the shoulder. She had perfected that specific influencer voice, breathy, vulnerable, calculated. The caption read, "My own sister stole my heirloom diamonds." Heartbreak emoji. Hashtag betrayal. Hashtag toxic family. "I did not want to make this video," she said, wiping away a tear that didn't smudge her mascara. "But I think it is important to talk about toxic siblings." At my graduation party, my sister, who has always been jealous of me, she took the vintage earrings my grandmother left me. And when we confronted her, she just left. She abandoned us. I scrolled through the comments. "Omen Queen, I am so sorry. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon, sis. Cut her off. You do not need that energy." I did not feel angry. I felt a cold sense of validation. They were not mourning the loss of a relationship. They were milking it for engagement. Ashley wasn't hurt. She was creating content. Then there were the voicemails from my mother. She left 5 in one afternoon. I listened to them while analyzing a risk report for a client. "Beatrice, you need to call and apologize to your sister. She is distraught. Do you have any idea how bad you look? Running away like a coward?" Click. Next message. "I know why you did it. You have always been plain. You have always faded into the background, and you hate that Ashley shines. But stealing? That is a new low. Even for you. Bring the earrings back, and maybe your father won't call the police." Plain. That was the word she used to use when she bought me clothes 2 sizes too big because it didn't matter what I wore. Plain. It was her way of saying I wasn't an investment. I was overhead. By Friday, the cruelty had stripped away the last microscopic layer of guilt I had been holding on to. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a prop, and when the prop stopped working, they didn't try to fix it, they tried to throw it away. I was sipping an espresso, watching the sun dip behind the skyscrapers, when my phone rang again. I expected it to be my father, finally raging about the bounced venue check, but the name on the screen made me pause. Aunt Lisa, my mother's sister, the successful lawyer, the cold one who had been estranged from the family for a decade. I hadn't spoken to her since I was 17. I swiped answer. "Hello, Beatrice." Her voice was sharp, professional, familiar. "I saw your sister's little video performance. And I have been watching your mother's Facebook rants. I think it is time we had a conversation. Meet me at the bistro, on 3rd. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring the receipts." The bistro was quiet, the kind of place where business deals were made over sparkling water and silence. Aunt Lisa was waiting at a corner table. She looked like a sharper, more dangerous version of my mother, same bone structure. But where my mother was soft and frantic, Lisa was steel. She wore a tailored suit that cost more than my father's car, and she was reviewing a file with the intensity of a shark smelling blood. I sat down. I did not say hello. I just slid my laptop bag onto the empty chair. "You look tired, Beatrice," she said, closing the file. "But you also look clear." "I like clarity." "I am done, Lisa." I cut them off. "I know. I checked the property records this morning. The mortgage payment bounced." She took a sip of her coffee. "But you are playing defense. And with people like your sister and parents, defense just means you are waiting to get hit again. You need offense." She slid a thick envelope across the table. It wasn't a warm gesture. It was a transaction. "I have been tracking Ashley's influencer career," Lisa said, her voice dry. "She posted a photo of those vintage diamond earrings 3 weeks ago. Then she posted a photo of herself at the airport for a brand trip to Cabo. She didn't have a brand deal, Beatrice. She had a pawn shop ticket." I opened the envelope. Inside was a photocopy of a receipt from Gold Coast Pawn and Loan. It was dated 4 days before the graduation party. Item: vintage diamond drop earrings, 2 carat. Payout: $4,500. Customer: Ashley Miller. "She sold them," I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She pawned them to pay for her vacation. "And bought a pair of $60 cubic zirconia fakes to wear to the party," Lisa finished. "She didn't accuse you because she was mad. She accused you because she needed a scapegoat. She needed the heirloom to disappear so no one would realize she had already sold it. She framed you to cover a felony." My hands tightened on the paper. It wasn't just toxicity. It was criminal. My sister had calculated that my reputation was worth less than a weekend in Mexico. That is not all, Lisa said. You know why I left the family? Because your grandmother didn't leave that house to your father. She knew he was incompetent. She left it to a trust that I manage. The room seemed to tilt. Your father has a life estate, Lisa explained calmly. Meaning he can live there as long as he pays the maintenance and taxes. But if he defaults? If the mortgage goes unpaid for 60 days? The trust dissolves the life estate, and the asset is liquidated. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. And here is the part they never told you, Beatrice. You are the sole beneficiary of that trust. You don't just pay for the house. You own 50% of it right now, and if he defaults, you own all of it. I sat back, the breath leaving my lungs. For years, I had felt trapped by my obligation. I thought I was the only thing standing between them and homelessness. I thought my financial support was a shield, protecting my family from the cold world. But in that moment, the illusion shattered. I had not been a shield, I had been a prisoner. I realized then that my duty wasn't a virtue, it was a mechanism of control. I had been conditioned to believe that my value lay in my ability to endure, to fix, to pay. I thought I was keeping a roof over their heads, but I was actually building the walls of my own cage. My generosity had not bought their love. It had only bought their silence. I wasn't protecting them from reality, I was subsidizing their delusion. And as long as I kept paying, I was just handing them the keys to my own shackles. He is about to default, I said, my voice steady. Lisa smiled, a cold, sharp expression. He already has. And as the trustee, I am legally obligated to protect the beneficiary's asset. Which means, Beatrice, we are evicting them. She handed me a pen. Sign this, it is the notice to vacate. We serve them tomorrow. I looked at the paper. It was an eviction notice. It was a declaration of war. But more than that, it was the key to the lock I had been picking for 27 years. I did not hesitate. I signed. The lobby of my office building was a sleek expanse of marble and glass, usually quiet, usually controlled. But today, it was a war zone. I saw them as soon as I stepped out of the elevator. My mother, Jennifer, was screaming at the security guard, her face a mask of indignation. My father, Michael, was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear, shouting into it. And Ashley was filming. She had her phone held high, recording the injustice of being denied access to a building she could not afford to park in. We need to see Beatrice right now, my mother shrieked. This is an emergency. She has cut off our power. She is trying to kill us. The security guard, a man named David, who I greeted every morning, looked relieved when he saw me. Miss Beatrice, he said, stepping forward. These people claim to be your family. They are creating a disturbance. It is okay, David, I said, my voice calm. I will handle it. My mother spun around. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. You, she spat. What have you done? The lights are off, the water is off, the mortgage payment bounced. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Embarrassing? I repeated. Like being accused of theft at a party you paid for? This isn't a game, Beatrice, my father shouted, hanging up his phone. The bank is threatening foreclosure. We could lose the house. Fix it, now. Ashley lowered her phone slightly, but kept recording. You are literally ruining our lives for content, she sneered. You are so jealous it is pathetic. Just pay the bills so we can go home. They still didn't get it. They thought this was a tantrum. They thought I was acting out, trying to get attention. They thought they could bully me back into submission, back into the role of the silent provider. I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a single, cream-colored envelope. I am not fixing anything, I said. But I do have something for you. I handed the envelope to my father. He snatched it, tearing it open with shaking hands. What is this? He pulled out 2 pieces of paper. The first was the photocopy of the pawnshop receipt. The second was the notice to vacate. Signed by Aunt Lisa and me. My father stared at the receipt. Then he looked at Ashley. then back at the receipt. Gold Coast Pawn, he read slowly. Vintage diamond drop earrings. Customer, Ashley Miller. My mother snatched the paper from him. She read it, her face going pale. Ashley, she whispered. You sold them? Ashley froze. The phone in her hand lowered all the way. For the first time in her life, she looked scared. Not fake scared for a video, but actually terrified. I needed the money, she stammered. For the brand trip, I was going to buy them back. Beatrice she just ruined it. You framed me, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the lobby. You sold your inheritance to pay for a vacation, and when you needed a cover story, you decided to destroy my reputation. You made me a thief to cover your own crime. My father looked at me, then at Ashley. The cognitive dissonance was breaking his brain. His golden child was the criminal. His scapegoat was the victim. And the other paper, I said, pointing to the notice in his hand. Read it. He looked down. Notice to vacate, he read. Pursuant to the terms of the Eleanor Miller Trust, due to default on mortgage payments. The life estate is hereby terminated. Property to be liquidated by the beneficiary, Beatrice Miller. Beneficiary? My mother gasped. What does that mean? It means I own the house, I said. Grandma left it to me, not you, Dad. Me. You were allowed to live there as long as you paid the bills. But you didn't pay the bills. I did. And I am done paying. You can't do this, my father sputtered, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. I am your father. That is my house. It was never your house, I corrected him. It was a charity case. And the charity is closed. I looked at them one last time. My mother, who called me plain. My father, who called me overhead. My sister, who called me a thief. They looked small. They looked like strangers. You have 30 days, I said. Get out. I turned around and walked toward the elevators. I didn't look back. I heard my mother start to cry. A real, ugly sound of despair. I heard my father shouting my name, but the doors slid shut, sealing them out, sealing me in. As the elevator rose, lifting me back toward the sky, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I had not even realized I was carrying. It was the weight of their expectations, their entitlement, their lies. It was gone. I was light. I was free. And for the first time in my life, I was going home to a place that was truly mine. The liquidation was efficient. The house sold in 4 days. The market was hot. And apparently, my father's pride and joy was actually a very desirable asset once you stripped away the delusion of who lived there. The proceeds were split according to the trust. 50% went to the bank to cover the defaulted mortgage and the fees. The remaining equity was divided. My parents used their share to put a deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex 40 minutes away from their country club friends. There is no garden for my mother to host parties in. There is no porch for my father to survey his kingdom from. They are just 2 people living in a box, finally paying their own way. Ashley didn't go to jail, but she lost something more valuable to her, her audience. The fraud charges were settled with probation and community service, but the internet has a long memory. When the truth came out that the heirloom diamonds she cried about were pawned by her own hand, her followers evaporated. She works retail now. She has to wear a name tag. She hates it. I received a check for $160,000. For a few days, I just stared at it. It sat on my glass desk, a piece of paper that represented 3 generations of trauma, silence, and endurance. I could have invested it. I could have bought a condo in Cabo. I could have done anything, but I realized that if I just spent it, I was still reacting to them. I was still letting their actions dictate my finances. True justice isn't just about burning down the weeds. It is about planting something new in the soil you have cleared. Retaliation settles the score, but creation changes the game. I didn't want my victory to be defined by their destruction. I wanted it to be defined by what I built from the ashes. So, I didn't buy a condo. I called Aunt Lisa. Together, we established the Eleanor Scholarship, named after the grandmother who tried to protect me. It is a dedicated fund for high-achieving university students who have been financially cut off by abusive or controlling families. It pays for tuition, housing, and therapy. We awarded the first 3 grants yesterday. One of the recipients is a girl who wants to be a data analyst. When I called to tell her, she cried. She told me she thought she was going to have to drop out because her parents refused to sign her loan papers. I told her, "You are not a burden, you are an investment." That was the moment the wound finally closed. I am sitting on my balcony now. The sun is just starting to rise over Lake Michigan, painting the water in shades of gold and fire. The city is waking up. The coffee in my mug is hot and strong. My phone is on the table. It is silent. No demands, no crises, no notifications of unpaid bills that are not mine. I used to think my value was in how much I could carry for others. I thought love was a transaction where I paid and they took. But looking out at the horizon, I know the truth. I am not a battery, I am not a safety net, I am the architect of my own peace. And this view? I didn't just buy it. I earned it. If this story reminded you of your own strength, hit that like button. And if you have ever had to walk away to save yourself, share this with someone who needs to hear it. You are not alone.